Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Today it is Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper. And my kids went off for their last day of school this morning that we're recording this on Friday, May 30th, Derek. So it feels like summer is here. And the fun thing about summer is we get to dive into some fun things. Can maybe expand, think back, revisit some things. And that's what we're going to do today. I thought of Jalen Brunson playing as well as he in the playoffs. Kind of made me think, man, what if Jalen Brunson had actually picked Illinois as he was leaning towards at one point in his recruitment, which you covered very, very well. And it's got me thinking of let's go over some of the biggest what ifs in Illinois basketball's recent history. We're keeping this to the 21st century because it's what Derek and I really remember. And it's what we have covered. So we're going to go down the rabbit hole of some of these. It should be a fun exercise, Derek. Are you ready for all of these? I sent you a list. I don't know if you've added any yourself, but we can pull on some strings here.
I told you before we hopped on, it feels like a couple of these could be its own podcast. So I will try to be as fully prepared. My mind was just going, well, remember this. Don't forget to mention this nugget about a certain one. So it's a bolsterous list. And obviously, if you go back predating our time covering Illinois basketball, or even really, we would have been young or even not born. Like, what if the Deion Thomas, Bruce Pearl thing never would have happened? What if that 84 team doesn't play in Lexington for the Elite Eight? So, like, there's a couple of those through the years. I know you get in the slush fund and all that kind of stuff. But, this era, and I know a lot of it's tied to, like, missed opportunity and painful memories for Illinois basketball, too. Obviously, they've had plenty of success from 2000 and on, and we'll get into all of that as well. But it creates a lot of fun conversation. But, yeah, happy summer to the Werner family. Enjoy the pooling and everything that has to come with that.
Yeah, I think you'll learn once your kids get into school there, because it's summer is a break for the kids, not as much for the parents, because
Right.
we have to usher them around. Like, we've been used to them being gone for 6-7 hours a day, where it's like, hey, we got our time. I can get this done. I can podcast. My schedule gets busier, it feels like, in the summer, at least with the home life. But happy for them. Man, I'm going to have a third grader and a first grader. It's absolutely crazy to think of. But the other one I was thinking of was Kenny Battle getting injured in the Final Four practice, right? That was another one. Obviously, people look back on is one that really, really hurts. I guess that happened in the semifinals, but that one obviously hurt them as well. So you think of all of these, but there are a few things I want to hit on before we get into the what ifs here. And just a few things that have happened, since the last time we podcast. And one of them is Terrence Shannon having a really strong Western Conference Finals for the Timberwolves. And I know a lot of Illini fans wanted to see him more. I loved seeing him. So I understand just the urge to see him. And what he did, he made an impact. But I will say, like, Minnesota's got some pretty talented guards. Like, it's not like Nickeil Alexander-Walker didn't make an impact. Not like Dante DiVincenzo didn't make an impact. To be honest with you, it just felt like their stars need to play better, including Anthony Edwards at times. Plus, Oklahoma City is just a wagon. But every time Terrence had a chance this season to make an impact on a team that really did not need to draft a wing, but they saw him at 27, Derek, and said, what the hell is this guy doing here? Why the hell did you not take him Milwaukee Bucks when you need somebody that can help Giannis? But to their credit, Chris Finch, he did play him. And I think a huge role is ahead for Terrence now that Alexander Walker's hitting free agency. What's the future of Mike Conley? It is clear they are excited about what he can be. And I do think he could have made a bigger impact this year. He just happened to be on a very, very good team. But what was your takeaways from watching TJ make an impact in the Western Conference Finals as a rookie, albeit a 24-year-old rookie?
Yeah, I understand it's hard for Illini fans to have patience and to understand that, it's been a long time since we've seen an Illini, being able to be a huge factor in a playoffs, and to see that he's ready for it. That's part of ready to contribute. Like, that was part of the deal with TJ coming into this draft, that he was going to be impact ready based on his body, based on his game. Played 5 years in college, and the downhill explosion not only plays in college, it obviously is a big factor in the NBA as well. And you think back to that game in LA in the regular season. I mean, he's just dominating towards the rim, and gives you some real defensive upside as well with his athleticism. And I know, I can't remember which game it was, but he got subbed in on a defensive lineup to try to guard SGA on an inbounds. Like, hey, if you get a steal, we might be able to go the other way and win this game or tie this game. No pressure. Otherwise, you got to foul him. And SGA kind of hits him with a push off and then gets the inbound. But like you said, yeah, you've got Alexander Walker, you've got DiVincenzo, you've got veterans in front of him that and guys that are good players. You go think back to the start of the season. Joe Ingles was in front of him in the rotation, and that guy's surprised he's not 45 years old. He's got to be close. So the future is still there for him to carve out a bigger role. And to see the A-Rod comment, which I know went viral, especially on Illini Twitter, of he's part of the future for us, which is exactly what you want to hear if you're Terrence. So I get some of the frustrations, but I would just be excited that he showed these flashes in year one, and he's on a really exciting team and one that should be a factor year in and year out.
Yeah, and for a team like the Timberwolves who are way over the cap already, having a cheap player like Terrence Shannon is so important. It is so important for what they're doing, and he's going to be in the rotation next year. So I think he's going to make a huge leap, and he has earned that. So I wanted to see him a little bit more, but I kind of got it from Minnesota's perspective. They did not struggle to score for most of that until game 5, where they just seemed to lay down. But defending the Oklahoma City Thunder was really, really difficult, and Terrence can hopefully help that with them moving forward. I just go back to, I can't believe he did not go higher in this draft. Like after Dalton Connect was taken, any guard that was taken before that, and Keyshawn George got a nice upside. I don't know that many teams, especially teams that needed impact players, Derek, like passed on somebody who's so ready to play. Like we talked about the future of Terrence Shannon. He's older than Anthony Edwards, right? So like it is a guy who's ready to play, dominated college. And what is obviously shined, Derek, is his physical gifts. They translate to the NBA level. Like he is still a freak athlete at his size in transition. He is still unbelievable. He is elite in transition. I think he can get better defensively. I thought he could have been better in college, just like I would assume. Like I thought there was upside there where those guys maybe didn't defend to their ceiling in college because of how much they had to expend on the offensive side. We've seen Io become a great defender in the NBA. I think Terrence can become a smarter defender on that end. But man, in transition, he's so good. He's a solid 3-point shooter. Over 30%. He's going to shoot mid-30s, I think. So I think he's going to be a really good NBA player for a really long time. And I think Minnesota was really smart to take him where they did after he fell. So I'm really excited about what his future is going to be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And similar to Io, that 3-ball as an off-ball option in a lot of cases is going to be important for him to, and that was a part of why I think he was where he was in the rotation early in the year. I think in the preseason was just a small sample size. I don't think he made a 3. So when you're going to be in the corner on the wing when Ant's got the ball or some of these other DiVincenzo, you got to be able to make those shots. But yeah, like you said, he really elevated that at Illinois and has shown that he can be a very solid shooter. Defensively, yeah, he's got plenty of potential. All of the athletic tools are there. I think that if he can find a way to do the IO of just really dialing in at that end, I think it'd be exciting of what he could become at that end of the floor. So, thinking back to that draft night, can't believe there was anxiety in the room of like, oh no, are we going to be I don't think they would have booked a second night at the watch party location. Are we going to go a whole night and he's not going to get picked? He doesn't deserve this type of thing. And I know the Illinois camp, yeah, I think it was Milwaukee, and I was doing some draft day or right before talking around, gauging, like, I think they're like, oh, we're pretty confident if he's there at the Milwaukee pick, they're going to take him. And obviously they didn't. So looks like it could be a steal. And I think it's a great win for Illini fans, for us who want to see Terrence, because when you flip on Terrence, you're also flipping on Anthony Edwards, and I'm down for that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, speaking of age, Terrence is 6 months younger than Io. So for him, you wonder, Io's going to get a third contract that's going to be massive here, right? Like just as a rotational player in the NBA, potentially a starter. Terrence, this second contract's huge for him because what will that third contract look like? But he's going to earn it. Like that is what he has proven, is that he belongs here. He's a rotational player, could be a starter in the NBA. He's going to get that second contract that is going to be so important for him. Guys are going to get first contracts here, Derek. Will Riley, Kasparas Jakucionis, they're officially in the NBA draft. If there was any doubt of them going to the NBA, that deadline has passed. They are in the NBA. And I saw ESPN's Jonathan Givony had his latest top 100 out, and Kasparas he has at number 10 overall. He said anywhere between 8 and 14 is where he expects him to go. I still think that's the low end for Kasparas. I think he's going to be a lottery pick, and if he slid to the mid-teens, I'd feel pretty good about it. Will Riley had at number 17, and he said he can go anywhere from 11 to 20. So if that's what Jonathan Givony's hearing, it's probably what these guys are hearing, and 2 top 20 picks sounds pretty good for Illinois.
Huge, yeah, and potential if Will slides up to be 2 lottery picks, which would be just massive for the program to be able to sell that and have that on their resume, and for both those guys, obviously, to know what that would mean for their financial futures, and then you get a chance to watch what that looks like for them, and both have really high upside. And but it speaks to what Will did, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but it really, the fact that Gavoni has not, he was on the front end of putting him middle of the first round and has not wavered from that, post combine, post workouts, post buzz on any of that kind of stuff. He's, and to that range, he's confident that he could go even higher than 17. So that means Will is making a good decision if that's where the range ultimately is, and excited for him. And he's very toolsy as a playmaking wing, as we've talked about. KJ, to have the season that he had, the highs of it were great, and I think that the NBA still has to factor that in just as much as some of the struggles and some of the things that they need him to clean up. And I'm personally really excited to just get the next viewpoint of KJ in the summer league. I know it won't matter in terms of, like, sometimes you want to overanalyze summer league too much, but I just want to see what the next viewing opportunity of KJ is going to be. Is he going to look like more of that first 2 months KJ at Illinois in terms of being that productive and that impactful and cleaning up some of the mistakes? So awesome for those guys, and looking forward to, before too long, hearing their names and what team will be following with those guys.
Yeah, and Illinois could have 2 guys at the draft, so we have put in credentials to cover the NBA draft, which is an exciting thing to potentially do with, I think, 2 guys who should be there that night. So that's really exciting for the program, and obviously helps with recruiting as well. But the Big Ten, man, got stronger with this NBA NCAA withdrawal date. Nate Biddle returns to Oregon. We've talked about it. Him and Thomas Ivicic are the best returning big men in the Big Ten. The best one, though, might be at Michigan with Yaxel Lendeborg. He is going to Michigan, protected first-round pick, and he's deciding to come back to Michigan, paying him a lot of money to do it. But, boy, he was awesome at UAB last year. Derek, those are 2 top-tier Big Ten teams, right? Like, I got some questions about Michigan's guards, but Namari Burnett and Roddy Gale are pretty good players, right? And now you add Cadeau is the big unknown, but the pedigree is certainly there. Former 5-star prospect transferring from North Carolina. Sure, this impacts Merez Johnson. Is he Mara from UCLA, the big transfer, and Lendeborg all got to figure out their minutes? I still think there's no doubt Merez Johnson's playing 20-plus minutes, right, for this Michigan team. That's a loaded roster. Dusty May's done a really good job there, and Oregon with Biddle and Shellstead back. That's one of the best duos in the country. So we talk about the top tiers in the Big Ten. I think Illinois has a chance to be in there. Purdue certainly needs to be in there. Oregon and Michigan, and I think UCLA, a lot of other people would have. Like, those would be the schools I'm thinking about there.
No doubt. Yeah, that's a huge offseason win for Michigan, where there was a good stretch of time this spring that we said, okay, we know Lendeborg, who's number 1 on the 24/7 portal rankings, is committed to Ann Arbor, but you see the way they kind of built almost, I think, a little bit of an insurance policy of getting both Merez and Mara. But we know that Dusty May is fine playing 2 bigs. It's a little different in terms of the skill sets, though. Lendeborg can't step out and shoot a little bit. So there is a potential fit as far as that goes. But Merez and Mara, not guys that I'd want on the same court unless you're Mike Woodson. So I think that beyond that, I mean, for them to get that as somebody that really rose, based on the way he finished the season, especially played really well in the NIT. They could have been a late first-round pick. That the money makes sense to go back to college. That speaks to what we've gotten to with NIL and everything like that. But
Which is great, by the way. I love it.
Oh, I don't know. The quality of talent that's going to be in the game is great for college basketball and college basketball fans. So you look at his numbers at UAB. I mean, they were ridiculous. He stuffed him with points, rebounds, assists, blocks. Like he is a do-it-all type of forward. And yeah, I still think Merez is going to play. If I were to project their lineup as of today, I'd probably say Lindeborg at the 4 and Merez at the 5, Mar off the bench as he was at UCLA. And they can find a way to mix and match all those guys. But yeah, if they still have Trey Donaldson, I'd be really confident in putting them as a Big Ten title contender. I know that Torvik has them in the top 5 or top 6 nationally, which is saying a lot. There will be a lot on their guards to get that done. Oregon, like you said, it's Biddle and Tommy as the top 2 centers. If Trey Kaufman-Renn was still a center, then like he was last year, I know he was a 4-man playing the 5, but obviously he would, from productivity standpoint, trump everybody. But in terms of a true 5, it's those 2, and that's a huge one for Oregon to get back.
Yeah, Michigan's got Trey McKinney coming in, really good prep prospect, one of the better freshmen. So they're loaded. Dusty May has been a great hire for Michigan. He's been a big upgrade. That is for sure. Last thing I want to get to, just to wrap up the conversation about him. Felt like 4 months ago, Illinois was going to get Dame Sarr. Now he's heading to Duke for a boatload of money. Duke needed to add somebody, and very talented player. I love him as an NBA prospect. I've said it before, but he reminds me of Andrew Wiggins and just his size, his length, his ability. There's potential to be a two-way player. He's got a developing shot as well. I think he's going to be a lottery pick next year. But I thought Illinois, and I wrote this last week in my 7 thoughts, Derek, like it made sense that they wanted to go invest in somebody who was a little bit more proven and that they could count on. Like, do you want to go in another year when you have Boswell and Ivasic? Do you want to go in relying on your best wing player being a freshman? Even if it could be a lottery pick, you maybe want more consistency. So it was basically a pivot to Andre Stojakovic. And I think that makes a lot of sense for Illinois. But Duke's getting a very good player in prospect in Dame Sarr. So any final thoughts on just the Dame Sarr pursuit by Illinois?
It's disappointing that it didn't end up being him landing in Illinois based on the way he blew up with Barcelona and the fact that he flashed really well at the Nike Hoop Summit. And as people learned more about him, or you saw more and more of his game, that you thought that I think the Wiggins comp is a really good one, just based on the athleticism, the defensive potential, the open court ability. I mean, his ability to get downhill in space is really, really exciting. So, and he shot the 3-ball better than what he had, or he was inconsistent as a 3-point shooter throughout his career in Europe, but he's been shooting it a little bit better here of late.
And Derek, the questions I have about this team still are downhill score, athleticism on the wing, right? Like, so those are still 2 things like he could have added that they could still use on this roster. But I get it. Like you want a guy can get 15 plus points a game every night, and I think Stojakovic is that kind of guy.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great point as far as still missing from a need standpoint, or just things that you could, if you were going to say, what else could they use? He would check boxes there. As far as the choice between Dame and Stojakovic, I totally get where Illinois and agree with the choice. I think it makes the most sense to get somebody to put up 18 a game and at the high major level to come in and be a proven scorer, and they need that. Outside of that, then you're relying more on, I know Tommy can obviously, be a guy that's going to put up some good numbers points wise. Kylan Boswell, if he's the same player he was down the stretch of last year, and he'll be a senior. He'll be a guy that I think you put a decent amount of trust in, but you need somebody in some crunch time moments, just over the course of a game, high volume, to go out there and do that. I think it opens up a conversation. It's a fair one. I even had this one myself, and talking to people around behind the scenes too, like, what could have happened for you to be able to take Dame and Stojakovic? Because the way it would have to work for me, from a money standpoint, just to throw this out, I heard about $2.5 million for Dame Sarr, which is less than where some of the initial surge after the Hoop Summit was like, hey, $3+ million. There were some offers there. Maybe he took a slight discount because Duke is Duke and he wanted to play there, but is it Mihajlo Petrovic and like
Ty,
maybe? From a money standpoint, you might need like a Petrovic and a Z or a Mirkovic. Yeah, I don't know exactly what Ty is getting. So I think it would be interesting if you had Sarr but not Petrovic. Then you're wondering, okay, can Kylan be the on ball, the point guard, or is Stojakovic going to essentially be that? It opens up some interesting ways the roster could have gone. But obviously, Petrovic, 22, going to be 23, and Ty's been around the block at Illinois. He's older. So what do you think about that?
I want to get this off my top of my head is it also, we're going to talk about the what ifs here in a moment. The what ifs of what Jeff Alexander's recruiting profile would look like if he just would have been able to close on some of these that weren't his problem, right? It was more just like roster decisions.
Yeah.
Jeremy Fears, Jeremiah Fears, now Dame Sarr, basically could have had, I think Illinois probably could have had if they really, really wanted to and made that a priority because he did a phenomenal job of evaluating, making him priority, developing the relationships over there. But it just, Dame started to play for Barca and played extremely well and played himself at the Nike Hoop Summit into a different tier where a Duke came along. And if you're Illinois, you basically knew you had the burn of the hand anyway with Andrei Stojakovic. You got to take that because beating out Duke in itself wouldn't have been the easiest thing for Illinois if they had chosen to prioritize Sarr. So made a lot of sense. But yeah, they could use this kind of player, right? But I still thought they made the right decision in Stojakovic. Plus, you need some depth, man. You still need some depth, and having a Petrovic that gives you something you didn't have, having a Mirkovic who gives you some of the things you lost with Merez Johnson, and having a Ty Rodgers who's been here. I think there's value in all that. Maybe we're talking about the money wise. Maybe it's all three of those guys combined to get a Dame Sarr type. So I think it makes sense, but he's a really good prospect. I think he could have a great year, and I would expect he's a lottery pick next year.
I fully agree with that. Yeah, no, I think that from money standpoint, that's accurate. If you wanted to throw Z in there, I mean, the benefit of having a stretch five that can really shoot it on all occasions is something I wouldn't be wanting to give up if I was Illinois. If you want to try to make you feel like you're in the trade machine on ESPN trying to do the NBA trades and balancing cap and all that kind of stuff. That's not a piece I'd want to throw in there, but I think it's also worth mentioning. You mentioned it there. If Illinois wanted Sarr or was still in the mix, and if he played the waiting game still, there's a world where I fully respect, and I think that the connections that Jeff had and the job that they did it was great, and they would have had a real good chance to get him. But I reported back in late March, I think it was maybe into April, that Duke's involvement had changed some things, some dynamics in this recruitment. And if he waited it out and Duke then was like, oh yeah, Cedric Howard's not going to come to us, we're going to go all in on Sarr, that could have gotten tough. Not saying they would have lost it, but I think that's worth mentioning. Like you said, Stojakovic, they had teed up and they got it done. And this roster makes a lot of sense as far as that goes.
The last thing that was on my mind, you talked about Terrence, the first guy in a while to make an impact this deep in the playoffs. The only other guy I can remember. Do you remember Myers Leonard's 30-point game in the Western Conference Finals? Was it 2019 against the Warriors? Unbelievable. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and to see Myers do that was pretty awesome.
I was going to mention that. Was that's the last one?
Yeah.
Beyond that, you probably have to go back to Darren's Jazz days, and unless you're going to count, I mean, Kendrick played for the Heat, right, in the bubble finals.
Do we count that? Do we count Pods?
And that's no, I don't think we can count Kendrick, and definitely not Pods. But the Myers explosion in that series was incredible. It was wild.
That's awesome. All right, let's dive into our basketball what ifs of the 21st century for Illinois. We can just go back and forth, Derek, and you can bring up when you want to. I think we can't start the what ifs of Illinois basketball in the 21st century without starting with Bill Self. What if Bill Self didn't leave? Or like your radio partner, my former radio partner, Lon Taylor, likes to say, what if Matt Doherty wasn't bad at his job? And he would have stayed there, right? And Bill Self never would have gotten called, or Ron Gunther would have paid his, the price it takes to keep a great coach like Bill Self, whatever. I think he'd left for Kansas anyway, right? No matter what the money was. But if Bill Self never leaves, Derek, I think Illinois is what Michigan State was, and probably better than what Michigan State was during the 2000s and 2010s, right? We know what he did at Kansas, and Kansas probably a little bit higher ceiling just because of their history. But what he was doing at Illinois and what he set up at Illinois was one of the best programs in the country, and I think would have been the best program in the Big Ten for a decade. and potentially a national title winner. Because you go through this from 2001 to 2005, which were Bill Self's basically rosters, right? I know he inherited good stuff from Ron Kruger, but Illinois averaged 28.2 wins per season during that 5-year stretch, and they won 6 Big Ten banners. 6, 4 conference regular season titles, 2 conference tournament titles. Izzo, same time, was having a good run. He had just won a national championship. The next 5 years, Izzo, 22.6 wins per year, 1 Big Ten banner. One Big Ten banner, won a share of the regular season title with Illinois that next season. Also, if you had Bill Self, obviously all those guys would have stayed. And we can give Bruce Weber a lot of credit for Darren Williams, D. Brown, Luther Head. Like the system fit, it worked for those guys. Maybe unlocked something with them. I know Bill gets his Bucknell bill. He's a pretty good coach. Like he's still a pretty good coach who has won a couple national championships. Of course, getting elite talent helps with that. But you would have had Charlie Villanueva in 2003-04 and 04-05, because that's how long he stayed at UConn. And he would have given them something they just didn't have, right? Like Roger Powell was an undersized 4. You would have had a true NBA 4 athleticism, something you missed with Brian Randall missing the 04-05 season. So even if you think Weber maximized that roster he had, add Charlie Villanueva, I would have liked Illinois' chances against North Carolina in programs like that even a little bit more. They would have dominated the Big Ten. I don't know if they go undefeated for most of the regular season, but it still would have been a special team. Then Derek, you get Julian Wright in 2005, Sharon Collins in 2006. Do you get John Shire? Do you get Derek Rose? Like you would have been that program in the Big Ten. Like Michigan State would have been the second or third program in the Big Ten with Thad Matta's Ohio State teams. Like Illinois would have been number 1 in the Big Ten, one of the best programs in the country.
Boom. Yeah, I can't really add a whole lot to all that. It's a lot of the same thoughts that I had. I think they would have obviously gone to multiple Final Fours during that stretch. Would they have won a national title? I think so, most likely. I mean,
yes. With the talent Self is getting, you get so many bites at the apple of those long runs, right? Especially like guys like Julian Wright, Sharon Collins. Say you get Shire or Derek, like outside of Rose, like most of those guys are staying for a long time. And maybe Calipari gets Derek Rose anyway, but like the level of talent you're getting is going to have you in the conversation.
No doubt about it. Yeah, and Collins and Julian Wright were part of an Elite 8 team. They're 2 guys out of Chicago, 5 stars out of Chicago. Collins won a national title, that Mauro Chalmers Collins team. And then obviously he wins a title later on as well. So getting a title at Illinois, easy argument to make, in my opinion. I think that's something that he could have done. And yeah, that was something where I didn't – all the options of the roster in terms of the talent they could have coveted. I know that Charlie Villanueva, some people would say, well, yeah, he committed but wasn't signed. There was some rumors that, hey, even if Self stayed, would he have stuck? I think he would have stuck. I think they believe, obviously, that he would have stuck. And, maybe it's harder for Sean May to do what he does if Villanueva is hovering around the paint or doing some things as well. And Derek Rose is a really interesting one to think about. There are Illini people that obviously think that if Self was there, that that would have been one that Illinois finds a way to get done. I think that it would be interesting. Some of the what's the right way to say it? Freedom of movement in recruiting. Some of the finessing you could do in recruiting of what Self could do at Illinois versus what he did at Kansas. But yeah, no, he obviously was recruiting at a really high level at Illinois, and no reason to think that wouldn't have continued.
Yeah, and listen, Self, he's won 2 championships, but I know there's upsets that he's gotten upset in the first round, second round. So did Lou Henson a lot, by the way. Elite 8s, Final Fours, a lot of conference championships. That would have been here at Illinois. So it would have been a heck of a run. So that's the easiest one, because I think that Bill Self leaving, mostly Matt Doherty getting fired, changed a lot. But also, Derek, we got to put this little nugget in there. If Bill Self or Matt Doherty doesn't get fired at North Carolina, Roy Williams does not go to North Carolina, and would he have that roster in 04-05 that beat Illinois? That was, I mean, we talk about the rest of it. That was a ridiculous North Carolina team.
Was.
Right. And Roy Williams put that together. So that's another little butterfly effect thing, that he would not be at North Carolina. to be the team to go up against Darren Luther.
More reason for Doherty to draw so much ire from Illini fans. Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point that I haven't necessarily thought about. But yeah, that's pain. We're gonna get into what if Illinois would have gotten it done.
It's why Lonte is like public enemy number one outside of I think it's Bill Lamagna.
Yeah.
It is probably Matt Doherty. So I totally get it because it was that domino just changed it all for Illinois. All right, Derek, give me one that you're chewing on here.
Yeah, let's do the what if Illinois would have won the national title in 2005. And that's something that I've put a decent amount of thought. There are different ways to spin this thing off. I think to start it off, you're talking about a one-loss national champion, which I was doing some digging then. Like, this would be remembered as one of the best teams of the 21st century, maybe even of the ever definitely modern history. You have to go back to, do you know the last time, putting you on the spot, last time a national champion lost either 1 or 0 games?
Oh, man. So I'm remembering the teams that barely lost, right? And then lost like in the Final Four or whatever. Like the Duke J. Williams team is the team I remember, like maybe one of the greatest teams I've ever seen, maybe the greatest college team I've ever seen. They didn't win, right? UConn and Rip Hamilton beat them. That's the team that's like off the top of my head, but they didn't even win the national championship that year. Is it UNLV? Is it, or it's probably not that far back. Give me
who farther.
Really?
Top Knights, 76 Indiana, undefeated.
That includes one-loss teams too?
That includes one-loss teams. The last one-loss team is John Wooden in the early 70s.
Because I knew the 76 team was the last undefeated team, but I was like, there's got to be a one-loss team in there. So that's pretty amazing.
I was doing that this morning. Couldn't find a one-loss team between then and back in 76. So I think also who they beat in that 2005 title would add to their argument. UNC had 4 lottery picks.
Loaded. Just loaded.
4 lottery picks to beat them. I know that, the Big Ten, it wasn't a deep league like it is now. It was top heavy. Had 2 Final Four teams, 3 Elite 8 teams. When you include Michigan State in the Final Four, Wisconsin Elite 8. But yeah, what Illinois did that year to only lose on the Sylvester shot with 5 seconds left in Columbus, that would have such a huge argument for one of the best teams of a big stretch of time. I think also would it put an end, or I think it'd be the ultimate trump card to any of the. Now it's been fun to watch this play out during my lifetime, and as you get into the media, you get some close to some of these players in both eras. The 89 versus 05 argument. If 05 wins a title, there's no argument.
And I got a follow up to this, by the way, because I thought of another what if when it comes to this team. No, yeah, like they'd be they already are like the face of Illinois basketball. Like the Flying Illini are part of that, but Darren Luther, that was such an awesome group to watch. The style of play was unbelievable, but the personality was great, and obviously led by D. But it just would have been that monkey off the back of the program, and no longer be in that conversation of the best programs to never win one. Would have been huge for this program. I do wonder, practically, how much does it change recruiting for Bruce Weber?
Yep.
And how much does that add to Weber's length here? Because you win a national championship, it gives you probably another year or two. Like at some point, you're going to be like, yeah, this just ain't happening. You can't just go to a tournament every other year at Illinois after winning a national championship and that be good enough. But how much does it impact recruiting? I kind of have a little question about that because getting to the national championship, that team should have led to great recruits anyway. And it didn't go as well as they had hoped. But I do think it gives Weber maybe another year or two.
I'd rather broach that as well. One example that I pulled, Maryland, I think, is a comparable program in general. And just it would be a team that very, good program, good history, not a team that you traditionally expect to win a title. Gary Williams obviously won one. Steve Blake, Juan Dixon. The next year,
how was Gary Williams talked about at Maryland, Derek? We're around that program enough. Like he is the guy. Like he is the ambassador there. At least, even if he gets fired, I think Bruce is that guy at Illinois because he won the national championship. You can never take that away from him. Listen, Bruce comes back and people like to see him, but it's different when you win a title and you have that parade, right?
you got a ring, right? You got a ring to wear. See the banner, yeah, all that. So I agree with that. I think the Bruce would carry a legacy with him that would be obviously of a different era. But I wanted to throw in so title for Gary, then he goes to the Elite Eight with some of the same guys. After that, 8 more years in his career at Maryland, 4 tournaments, 4 missed tournaments, all 4 of the tournament appearances ended in the first weekend. Like it
Were
doesn't.
the Krivas Vasquez teams like his last teams? Yeah.
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, or was that Turgeon? Was Turgeon Grievous Vasquez?
I think they overlapped, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But
But
those teams kept beating Illinois. That's all I remember.
yeah, the point is as you were putting out there, I question how different would have you get into the late 2000s, into the early 2010s for Bruce. Does a title change the way a lot of that goes? I think you could argue no in a lot of cases. I think, like you said, it maybe gives you an extra year or two of grace. Maybe there's a recruit that it wows enough to tip the scales. But other than that, I think that, like you said, getting the national title obviously gave them a lot of clout that they didn't hold on to. And that's why a lot of people don't remember Bruce as fondly.
Yeah. Vasquez was all Gary Williams. That was the end of his career.
Okay.
No way. All right. Can I give a negative side of this? Like, the good thing that happened is you had one of the greatest all-time comebacks of all time. What if you don't win that game? Like, what if you don't beat Arizona? Like, what if you don't overcome a 15-point deficit in the final 5 minutes? Like, there's no debate about the Flying Illini versus the 05 Illini, right? Like, we're not even talking about that. Darren Williams NBA stock. I still think he's a lottery pick. Is he a top 3 pick? I don't think so. Because I think those couple games like just put him at another level where everyone was kind of shocked. Like, he went ahead of Chris Paul at that point. And obviously, Chris Paul having the better NBA career, even though Darren was very, very good in the NBA. But what if that didn't happen and Illinois didn't have that moment and didn't have that Final Four and run to the NCAA championship game? How much less does Bruce Weber get? Like, is it 2 years? Is it how much quicker does that happen? So that's another interesting one I thought about with that team. What if you missed one of those shots, right? Like, what if Darren didn't hit that 3? Just something I thought about.
Yeah, that's a really good one. The Bill Self exit is even a little bit more painful because at least you have some of the would Self have taken that team as far? I think is one question. One thing that being around Champaign for a lot of years, like well, you can not argue one. You can say a lot about Bruce Weber. You can't say anything about the way he coached that team and got the most out of that team, which I agree with. I think that's correct. But if that squad would have fallen short of a Final Four, that would leave obviously even more disappointment. I think from looking at it from my own life, it would be very comparable. Then the '89 team would be the '85 Bears to me. Like, as somebody that would be an Illini fan post that, not to say that still wouldn't have been a very, very good team, great team, really 2-loss team that got knocked in the Elite Eight. And then you've got some Underwood, obviously resurgence, consistency. So not quite the same as our Bears, but it would feel like there's that, like you said, that hump that then never gets over, even in times where you're up or you have really optimistic years, you fall short. So to me, that would kind of create a dynamic of it's been forever, and you always hear about this team. Oh, well, we still have the fun. Like, yeah, but most of your fan base, or I wouldn't say most, a lot of your fan base wasn't even born yet, as far as that goes. So that's one thought that came to mind.
Well, and like this Underwood resurgence, I'm sure there's a bunch of Gen Z kids that are like, okay, now we have our teams. Like, now we have Io and Kofi and we have Terrence. Like, I was sick of hearing about D and Darren. I wasn't born yet, or I was 3 years old when that happened. So it's nice to have that, like, that resurgence. And you'd like to just keep doing that and having many of those memories. But for sure, I do think of that for our generation. It sucks hearing about 85 all the time. I'm like, that was great. Great you had that. I had one great Lovie Smith team, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun. We didn't win it, though. Like, I'm sick of hearing about that team. And I think that's finally made clear because it's been a long time since the Bears have won a Super Bowl, and we're sick of hearing about it. All right, Derek, what's your next one?
Let's do this. I don't think this is going to go as long, but as we're sticking in this era, you're thinking about the national title game for Illinois, and not that long after, big recruit. We mentioned Derrick Rose as one that could have changed the game for Illinois. How about what if Eric Gordon never decommits and ends up at Indiana? I think that's something that obviously could have pushed forward Bruce Weber's post '05 and been a bridge to another elite guard. He was fantastic that year in Bloomington and put up just insane numbers. Obviously beat Illinois twice, and still will never forget seeing the banked in three that sends it to overtime, the Pruitt missed free throws. But I think it is fair to question whether there's enough talent around him
Yeah.
otherwise on that squad. I mean, you would have had McCamey as a freshman who was really good there. Yeah, I know that Gordon and Rose were AAU teammates on.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Goodman still considers that maybe the best AAU team ever that he's seen together. Maybe definitely the best AAU duo. So that's actually on YouTube. You want to go look that up. And I think they playing for Mean Streets. If you want to see their Peach Jam highlights, they were insane together. But I don't know that you get both. The Rose thing still probably plays out the way it goes, but maybe that changes a decent amount of just the expectation of who Illinois is getting in on. It lotto pick guys lead,
Yes.
as we've seen from a reputation standpoint, snowball effect into some other guys, getting their attention, wanting to be the next. I want to be the next Eric Gordon. So
Yeah.
that's what came to mind with him.
That's my biggest thing. Like, you would have made the tournament in 07, 08, which would have been huge for Bruce, just to continue that streak of tournaments. Like, they missed it. That was the first time, I believe, in 9 years that they had missed the tournament at that point. He was awesome. He was 21 points per game as a freshman. And that game was one of the ugliest games. It memorable. The Chester bump will live on in his lore for the rest, even with him not coaching here. So that was great, but like it was ugly in there, Derek. But Eric Gordon was awesome. Like late in that game, made some huge shots. Obviously, I think the banker to really close that one out. But he was a phenomenal player. You would have made the tournament with him. And I think most importantly, you would have had a lottery pick and just the perception of who goes to Illinois, because it wasn't big time recruits after D and Darren left, right? You did not capitalize on that. Eric Gordon was the guy you were capitalizing with. It's like, yes, Bruce Weber can get elite talent here. Dimitri McCamey was a really good recruit. Like, there were some other, Sean Pruitt was a good recruit, right? There's some good ones in there, but the level of Eric Gordon, that's what you should be getting after you get Darren Williams to the pros and you get to a national championship game. That would have changed that. So I think, I wonder what the impact of having that, making a tournament, would have been for Bruce Weber in the long term. I also thought about, like, because I was trying to remember everything that happened with Kelvin Sampson in Indiana. I was like, wait, would Kelvin Sampson have stayed at Indiana if he wouldn't have gotten Eric Gordon? But he wasn't the guy that all the phone calls were happening to. I looked it up. It was Yancey Gates, William Buford, DeJuan Blair, Dimitri McCamey, Devin Ebanks. And then he also was on some extra calls with Marcus Morris at the time. So I looked that up. I was like, wait, would this have been a bad thing for Illinois because Kelvin Sampson would have stayed at Indiana and Indiana would have been awesome for the next decade and a half? But no, it was to other recruits, not as much Eric Gordon. There are a lot of ethical questions about Kelvin Sampson recruiting Eric Gordon, a committed prospect. But come on, you'd want your coach to do the same damn thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this has been voiced a number of different times in comparison to what we then saw pop up in recruiting from breaking rules. And like,
it seems so like we're a bunch of prudes back then, right?
Yeah, too many phone calls.
Recruit committed players. Like, oh, come on. That seems like child's play now.
Yeah, phone call. You're working too hard. Like, you're putting in too many hours there. But
you ain't trying, right?
Yeah, that seems dumb. But yeah, I think that's something that maybe even, I'm sure Indiana fans haven't forgotten. But when we think about what has not gone right for Indiana, I mean, seeing what Sampson's put together at Houston, I mean, he's the model of consistency. I think it's been 6 straight Sweet 16s and obviously a couple Final Fours. Like, if that would have been pulled off at Indiana, oh boy.
Yeah, for all those people mad that I'm saying you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Listen, you broke the rules. You got to pay the penalty for breaking those rules. I don't disagree. Yeah, like you have to pay the penalty for that. But just comparison of what we think of now, it's kind of ridiculous. Big picture question. What if Bruce Weber or John Groce had NIL? To me, it feels like especially John Groce, because the battles he got into were pretty big time. You think of Cliff, Jalen Brunson, Quentin Snyder, Keita Bates-Diop, Charles Matthews, your boy Jordan Poole. Like, you start to think of what John would have done. Like, I just think it would have helped him close the deal on a couple players who would have changed his career. But also, if Bruce was just said, Bruce, it's within the rules, it's good. Because to his credit, Bruce was a man of ideals, did not want to cheat, right? And Ron Gunther, that's part of what he wanted after all the stuff Illinois had dealt with in their past with the Deion Thomas scandal, no matter what you think of that, the slush fund, all of that. Like, Illinois needed to be a rule-following school because every time they tried to break the rules, they were bad at it and got caught. So to have a chance, though, in that space with Derrick Rose, John Shire, Sharon Collins, you think of Sean Livingston, but he would have been, he was one of the last classes of going straight to the pros. But Eric Gordon, like, would have changed a lot for Bruce, and it would have changed a lot for John, too.
Yeah.
John might not have ever had a chance to be here, though, if Bruce had NIL.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. That's interesting as well. I think that from an NIL standpoint, to see where Illinois has been at, I mean, on the basketball side in particular, I know the football they've done pretty well and bolstering that within recent years, but they've been in a top 20, top 15 type of caliber in terms of what they have to then weaponize out there in the open market. And if that was allowed, like you said, Bruce was so, as far as what I knew about it, was so by the book. And heck, the guy towards the end of his career at Kansas State said, "I'm not going to cut my hair until the cheating stops or whatever." Start punishing people and does that whole thing. I know that. Again, it's hard to know exactly the Derrick Rose thing, like Calipari's Calipari and all of that, but I know that in college, now I didn't have the connections that I have now in terms of knowing a lot of the recruiting stories, but I knew a couple people that worked at Ubben, and they said that, hey, the story around there is that Reggie Rose on his visit shows up, wants a meeting with Bruce. They go into his office. They're in there for maybe 5 minutes or less. That he asks, what can you do for us, type of thing, and Bruce is like, we're not, not budging on that.
Yeah, right. And kudos to Bruce. He's got ideals. It obviously cost him, but you're automatically out of that conversation. Anthony Davis a couple of years later, right? You're not even in the conversation.
Yeah. So that put Illinois in a tough spot to win some of those bigger recruitments. Same thing could have been said of John Groce. And, does the Cliff Alexander hat flip not happen if you have NIL? I think if you wanted to rope this in together, and I used this in my mailbag recently, what if it's the full all-encompassing of the current era? You got the portal and NIL together. I think the portal is really interesting because
portal would have been bad for Bruce because D and Darren would not have been here.
Yeah, you're right.
D has said that on the record. Like he thought about transferring and sitting out a year. So yeah, that would have been a problem for him, at least originally.
Good point. I think it could have been really good for John Groce because you could have gotten DJ Cooper for a year at Illinois. You could have
ran some people off a little bit.
Ran some people off. That would lead into another what if, which we can do next.
Go straight into that one.
What if you could have taken both Revante Rice and Karis LeVert on the front end of the rebuild at Illinois for John Groce?
Because Karis was committed to Ohio, right?
Yep.
But you got the chance at Revante Rice, who credit to Lauren Tate. I remember Centennial. You probably remember this game. Had a game at State Farm Center, Assembly Hall then. And there was a bunch of big prospects there. Who were they? Blackshear, I think, was there. Some other guys. And Lauren Tate comes up to me and goes, Revante, he's the best player here. Why is Illinois not recruiting him at that time? And it was Bruce at that time. So John wanted him bad. They had one spot open. They took him. Probably they could have gotten Karis if they would have had another spot. But yeah, like Karis LeVert turns into all Big Ten player, 4-year player at Michigan. Those two together, you would have made tournaments, right? You would have consistently made tournaments. Are you compete for Big Ten titles? I don't know, but you steal a guy from a team that was winning Big Ten titles at the time in Michigan.
Yeah, Karis was a great Big Ten player, big-time scorer. It wasn't a problem in terms of having a couple of really talented players, though, for Groce, because we questioned all the time, like, how come Revante, Kendrick Nunn, and Malcolm Hill never did anything? I know it was earlier in Malcolm and Kendrick's career. One of those years would have been they were true freshmen with Revante. So throw Karis in there. It gives you, I think, the star power to make tournaments and do a lot more. And yeah, could you have just in the spring with a based on what it is right now, you come in as a new coach. Can you imagine that? Like coming as a new coach, you was that first year, that first offseason for Groce that you got Rivante? And
Yeah,
it would have been
sat out a year because you had but you also had Brandon return because there wasn't a transfer portal, right? And you had DJ
that's
return.
true.
So
Yeah, what if in one offseason though you bring DJ Cooper with you bring Karis LeVert with you, and you get Rivante Rice?
well, can you just imagine a backcourt of DJ Cooper, DJ Richardson, and Brandon Paul?
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
that's loaded. And then you find another big man that can help you out. Like Nano was good, but could have found another big man too. So Groce did start in on those grad transfers though. Like he got some good ones in Sammy Ice, Maniscalco, and John Eakey, pretty good
Sam
player.
McLaurin.
Sam McLaurin, Effett going to Illinois. Yeah. The biggest what if of John Groce's career is what if Jalen Brunson committed on his official visit there? So I will just leave that to you because I just think he would have been one of the greatest players in Illinois history. And obviously he's gone on to do what he's done in the NBA. This was the National Basketball Player of the Year. And what he did at Villanova over 3 years, like there's not many college basketball players that have as big of an impact on a program as a Jalen Brunson. Like he would have been in that conversation. He was one of my favorite high school prospects just because Derek, from the time he was a freshman or sophomore, put the ball in his hands, he's making the right decision and he's making the right play. And that's exactly what John Groce needs. Just never got that point guard. This is, in my mind, one of the best 21st century point guards in college basketball.
Yeah, just a flat out baller, a winner, a guy that just like you said makes the right play. He's physical, he's tough, he's everything that you want is running the show, and that was the biggest thing that John Groce was missing in his tenure of not having that DJ Cooper for him to then lead on in Illinois. And yeah, we talked about this with Joe Hendrickson here recently on the radio, and the story I'd always heard, I still remember getting a call. I think it was the Sunday after they left town in Champaign, and it was a staffer that said, "Hey, he wanted to commit, and his dad wouldn't let him." And sometimes I believed what I was told, because there was a really interesting divide in that recruitment. You could, again, this is another one that you could spend a whole podcast on, but when they got Snyder and I know that's another what if Quentin Snyder never decommits.
The bigger loss on that signing day was not
Yeah.
Cliff Alexander. It was Quentin Snyder decommitting.
Yep.
Anyway, go ahead.
When they got Quentin Snyder's commitment, they stopped recruiting Jalen. And back in that day, you understand that when you get a player commit, now I'm not saying it was the right move, but you couldn't have tried to get both. But I get, it almost would have been, wait, why you think we're going to come to Illinois? You just got a guy in the other class going to be your long-term point guard. So anyways, that really rubbed Rick Brunson the wrong way. He didn't want to let Illinois back in to the recruitment, but Jalen did. After Quentin decommits and everything like that. So Jalen was a lot more open-minded to Illinois the whole time. I think John did a good job. His girlfriend, now wife, was going to U of I. I think it was a real nice ace up the sleeve for Illinois in that recruitment. And that was his first official visit. He got to hang out with her. He got to see, everyone say, come be the guy here. And I think he was really feeling it. And, but Rick said, no, you're going to take another visit and go to and ended up at Villanova. Not a bad choice.
Worked out great. A great decision by Rick Brunson, right? Like you go to Jay Wright, you win 2 national championships, you play with all that talent that are still now with him in the Knicks. Ended up being a really smart decision for them. Just kind of hurt for Illinois, obviously.
Oh, man. And yeah, Joe said the same story. He said, Rick called me on Saturday. I think they were at Groce's house, and he's like, this guy wants to commit, but I'm not going to let him. So there you have it. So that's painful for as good of a career as Jalen had. And he's one
of my, like, in the NBA playoffs, Jalen Brunson, Alex Caruso are like my favorite dudes. And it's just, I love him. Like he just shouldn't be this good. Like he shouldn't be this good, but because he's not the biggest, he's not the most athletic. It's just, he's so smart and he's just such a killer. Love him.
Yeah. I think when you try to then factor in what do those Illinois teams look like? I even have had to remind myself a couple of times. Would there have been a crossover with Rivante? And like, no, actually, it would have been the disaster year. And they started the year in Springfield.
Yes,
would have been his freshman year. Now,
Coleman Lands would have been in the backcourt with him, right?
Yeah, and that was a big recruit, in terms of the prospect. Now, Kendrick was on that team. Malcolm was on that team. LaRon Black was on that team. Mike Thorne was on that team. Like,
That's enough.
that's enough. You got to have. I think what I landed on is you got to have some. In addition to getting Jalen, you got to have some better luck. Like, not to have Kendrick have the issue that he did and end up having to leave. Not to have LaRon that year. I think tears his meniscus. Obviously, he gets in trouble. Mike Thorne in the Iowa State game, I think he tears his meniscus as well, and he's out. So, does Jalen Brunson still? Does he lose to North Florida on opening night? Maybe that was a decent North Florida team, but
No,
other than that,
not
no.
no.
Not giving Bo Beach and was it Dallas
They're good.
Moore those guys the credit, but anyways, yeah, it would have been different. Joe said John definitely gets another contract. I agree with that, and I think they don't fail to make tournaments and maybe even have a nice run in there.
And again, you just wonder if getting a guy like Jalen Brunson, what's the impact of that recruiting moving forward? And I just love it for Malcolm Hill, just to have that guy. Because can you imagine Malcolm Hill as the number 2 guy on a Big Ten team? Like that's a really good team. I don't know if it's winning Big Ten championships again, but with Jalen Brunson, I wouldn't put it across him. But those two would be the best duo in the Big Ten, I think, at that time.
I agree with that. Can we do the Quentin Snyder? What if Quentin Snyder would have stayed at Illinois? Like, his career was not anything like spectacular at Louisville. He was a solid high major starting point guard. I was looking up his stats.
I got it right here. Averaging over his last 3 years, he averaged about 11 points per game. Didn't shoot it at a very high clip, about 40%, but did average 4 assists. Very low turnover guy. So he was like a 2.5 to 1 turnover guy. Just would have been the steady point guard John Groce needed, though, right? Like, it's just, again, give Malcolm Hill and Kendrick Nunn some help, but especially Malcolm Hill, like, needs somebody else to really step up. He just, you're counting on injured Tracy Abrams to stay not injured every year during those years. And he just wasn't that dynamic at that point after all those injuries. So, yeah, it just would have been that steady presence.
I agree with you. Yeah, and he shot the 3 really well. It was must have been the 2-point field goal that wasn't great because sophomore year 40% from 3. His senior year 41% from 3 on about 4.5 attempts a game, and so a guy that gives you a 3-point dynamic, like you said, really good assist to turn, and the difference between a upper tier starting point guard at a high major versus, I hate to knock on him because he's got knocked on a ton, Jalen Tate, Ahmad Starks, Khalid Lewis, like the guys that they had in relation to who they could have gotten was pretty painful for John.
And you just think about the teams you're going up against, like what Michigan was trotting out at point guard and all that. It's like, that's the kind of guy you needed. Like, you would have made tournaments and John would have gotten a second contract. Like, Quentin Snyder, I think, makes enough of a difference to turn you from just missing the tournament to making the tournament for Illinois for a couple years there. All right, let's get to the Brad Underwood era.
Do it.
What if Illinois had beaten Loyola?
Oh.
How would we have talked about John? How would we talk about Brad differently? Obviously, got a huge monkey off your back a couple years ago getting to the Elite Eight, but it still affects how I think we talk about Brad Underwood, because you would have ran into Houston in the Elite Eight, and that would not have been easy, right? We could even go back to what if Illinois had just played tournament game or 2 the year prior just to get that experience, right? And like to know what that feeling is like. Like, what if that had not happened? That might have helped. But just if you get by Loyola, you got Oregon State the next round, you're getting to the Elite Eight. Even if it ends there, huge. I don't know if they're winning the national championship that year because Gonzaga and Baylor were really damn good. But getting to a Final Four, like, I think we'd be talking about Brad, not like, yeah, he's a really good coach. He's in that 15 to 20, 25 range. Like, I think we'd be talking about him, and people nationally would be talking about him more like that, no doubt, top 12 kind of coach.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. That was a team that, if they played the way they played at the Big Ten tournament, could have very reasonably won the whole thing. Now, they would have had to beat a good Houston team in the Elite Eight, would have had to beat the rematch game against Baylor, and Baylor was just a wagon that year, and obviously gave Illinois a lot of problems when they played in Indianapolis. I think it's interesting from a defensive standpoint, we saw what bothered Illinois in that Loyola game, like aggressive blitzing the ball screen type of stuff. You want to get in the nitty gritty of it. Houston's obviously a really aggressive defense, athletic defense, and I think they would have done some of the same things. Baylor could switch everything, and it gave Io a lot of problems in terms of trying to find angles. So, like, I don't think that team wins it all. They maybe even fall short of the Final Four potentially. But I think they definitely get that Elite Eight game against Houston. You're playing, Oregon State sitting there in the Sweet 16. That's a gift, and I don't think that they fall short. I think they would have a reasonable chance, and I would have picked them to beat Houston, but obviously that would be a tough game anyway. So,
and if you would have gotten Gonzaga, I forgot what it would have been. Would it have been Baylor or Gonzaga? Do you remember?
Baylor, Gonzaga, yep.
But would Illinois have played which one in the Final Four game?
They would have played Baylor first, and if they would have won, then they'd play Gonzaga.
Gonzaga would have been a fun game. Like Jalen Suggs was great. Drew Timme, what year was he at that point? Freshman.
Yeah.
That was a really, really good team. It was Nemhard on that team, one of them. But like they were really good. But that would have been a really good game. I think Baylor probably would have won against Illinois. But they had a chance, and it just they ran into the wrong team. And they just did not play well. Your best player did not play well. None of your guards really played well. It's just a terrible, terrible game. And it certainly clouds what has been a great run for Brad Underwood. It's just, we'd be talking about him a little bit differently. I don't know if it changes the way I really actually think about him as a coach, but it certainly changes the perception of it all. And I don't know if it changes who they recruit and who they get moving forward. Right. But it's a missed opportunity. It's one of the biggest missed opportunities in program history.
It takes a big dark cloud away. That, like, the sun's shining just great on this program right now. I don't want to act like this is something that's really bothering his reputation right now, or obviously his winning consistency. He then, post Io Kofi went to an Elite Eight, so he's doing just fine.
Yeah, but
there's still that, isn't there? Yeah, and that's something that wouldn't be. I feel like no one's going to have a 100% approval rating, but there are those that still are, on the fence about Brad, or have their knocks on him. That would be something they just couldn't go to. I don't know what's your natural. What do you go to if he doesn't lose in that spot? What's some of our angry people and.
They lost to Houston, which made a Final Four the next year when they were injured, right? Half the roster was injured. 2003, they rebuilt, and that team just wasn't good enough by the end of the year. That you'd be reaching. You'd be reaching more. But this does give ammunition to people who think Brad Underwood in the one game turns or in the NCAA tournament isn't quite as good. Like, there's nothing really to argue against with Brad Underwood in the regular season. Right. Like, he's a very good coach. And they've had unbelievable success both in the Big Ten and in the non-conference. They've won some really big games. It's just, there's definitely some ammunition when you get into the NCAA tournament of only getting to the second weekend once in his tenure so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to mention this. This is kind of a little bit of a different off the beaten path here, but because the essence of a lot of these what ifs is things that they fell short of doing, things that went wrong that could have been more success. There's a lot of what ifs in the Brad tenure that went your way, that worked out really well. Like, you could go all the way back to the front, and I think, what if Brad would have hired Lamont Evans? What if Brad would have made the push, or even you don't even get him, but you push a little further and you pop up on the Brian Bowen report in the FBI sting as far as that goes, because that was a guy they were interested in and working on a little bit late in that cycle. Like, there are a lot I wrote about.
How about this one? What if you had prioritized Taylor Norton Tucker?
Yeah.
And you don't get Io DeSumo. You do not, like, you say, screw that. We're going to go get Taylor. If you want to be part of this, you want to be a part of this. Taylor Norton Tucker would have been a really good player. He's in the NBA, but that's a 1-year impact. You don't get Kofi Coburn if you don't have Io DeSumo, right? And we know what the impact. I don't think they do.
Obviously would have a really good end still there, but yeah, Io was huge.
It'd be questionable. It'd be questionable if you get him. You know better than me, but think of that. Think if you just been a little bit more stubborn and been no recruit and no camp is going to tell me what to do. I'm going to go get Taylor Norton Tucker who wants to be here.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that I still would think Kofi would come, but yeah, THT would 1 year if he would have done the same thing at Iowa State, and like that would be something that who's Kofi playing with? I mean, he's got Trent obviously, but Iowa is such a huge pillar of that. What if Io decided, or what if you could do the other side of what if this tournament didn't get canceled in 2020? What if Io played well enough to where he would have been a draft pick and not come back that following year? What if Kofi decides not to come back another? I know I'm getting into some of these questions that we had written down here, but there's some in there. What if? And let's do this. Will lead into one that we had on the list. What if Terrence Shannon Jr. would have went to Michigan?
What if you would have been admitted to Michigan? Yes, one of the biggest what ifs of the Underwood era, and it went your way.
It went your way. So that's one that, on the list of things that obviously, went your way. But
Juwan Howard is still at Michigan.
You're welcome, he said. You're welcome. That's a really, really interesting one. I had to think back to that cycle. Matthew Meyer, was Pete Nance in that same cycle? Would you? Yeah. I think that.
What are your guard options, though?
I know.
I mean, Matthew Meyer would have had a hell of a year. He would have put up a lot of numbers. You would have added somebody, right? But like that was the NFL draft weekend. I remember that because I was in Vegas at the NFL draft when he committed. And that was such a big deal. And then Matthew Meyer was still like a month later after that. So there definitely was more opportunity to add somebody else. But think about what he became. He stayed here 2 years and just the impact he made on the program. Like it's Io, Kofi, and Terrence. Like those are the three pillars of the tripod for Brad Underwood. And I don't want to belittle what Trent, DeMonte, and Georgie and a lot of these other guys have done, Marcus Damask, but certainly Terrence Shannon is the reason the program maintained and kept where they were. You would have missed the tournament the next year.
Yeah. Program great right there. And that's part of piecing together something that could really have gone wrong. Losing to Loyola for Brad. Yes, you turn around and win the Big Ten the next year with Kofi Trent, but stay out of the second weekend. And then if you don't get Terrence, what if you miss the tournament? What if that following year is not an Elite Eight appearance? Because obviously you had one of the best players in the country, and if you don't have him, I don't think you're going there. Even though you have some other nice pieces, like that's where things could go really, really differently.
The rebuild of the program would not look nearly the same, which is so important to Brad Underwood just getting a 3-year extension where it's basically like you're retiring here, right? Like Terrence is a huge part of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think Terrence was going to Michigan if he could get in. Like that was going to happen as far as I understood it. And
I will say this. I don't think Terrence Shannon becomes a first-round draft pick if he's going to Michigan.
It's fair.
I don't think he gets developed the way he does in Illinois, so it ended up working out very well for Terrence as well.
I have to remember, what would that roster have looked like for Michigan?
Loaded. I mean, you just talk about talent. That would have been absolutely loaded. Obviously, Hunter was a part of that.
Was that the Kobe Buffkin?
Yes.
Jet Howard.
Yes. Doug McDaniel. Tyrus Reed was a freshman. But yes, it was Hunter Dickinson, Kobe Buffkin as a sophomore, Jet Howard as a freshman, Doug McDaniel as a freshman.
With Terrence. And wow.
And that team went 18-16.
Yeah, exactly. Oh boy.
I mean, maybe Jet would have gotten all the touches and Terrence would have just been sitting in the corner. Kind of what I think would have happened there. So
maybe
worked out pretty well for Terrence on that end. What if Kofi had stayed another? What if Kofi would have done the Hunter Dickinson? Maybe that includes a transfer to make even more money somewhere else. But if he would have come back for a senior year, obviously that team, I think, would have competed for a Big Ten championship because even the guard questions, and I got some questions about Terrence and Kofi, how they would fit together with Kofi kind of clogging up the lane, right? Terrence would have had to do a lot of his stuff in transition, not in the half court. But still, that would have been an unbelievable trio with him, Matthew Meyer, and Kofi Coburn. But for me, it's just like more about the Kofi legacy, Derek, because he obviously has a huge legacy here. He's one of the best players to ever play, the most dominant big man. Even Deion Thomas will tell you that. he could have been the all-time leading scorer, could have threatened Dion at the very least. Rebounder would have been there, 3-time All-American. I feel like Io and D and some of these other players, like we talk about in a loftier status than Kofi, even though Kofi, I think, made just as big, almost as big of an impact as Io DeSumo here. If he had stayed another year, I think we're talking about him as like Mr. Illini, like one of those D Brown kind of presences where I just don't think we quite get there with Kofi because it was 3 years. Like Illinois is lucky it was 3 years, right? Like he could have gone after 2, but man, he could have made a lot of money here. And it would have made a lot of sense for him to come back.
Yeah, I think that you can make the argument there should be a statue of Kofi Coburn if he comes back for one more year, because he would be the most accomplished player to ever play at Illinois from a statistical standpoint. I think he would be on pace if you include his junior season stats and you give him a full season plus a little bit of postseason, that he would pass Dion. He'd be the all-time leading scorer, all-time leading rebounder. I know I did this in response to some of the people that did like, wait, Illinois is retiring Kofi Coburn's jersey. No, they're not retiring it. They're hoisting it in the rafters. But then there was just kind of like this interesting narrative of what his career was at Illinois. Like he would have been, like you said, a 3-time All-American. I think the last player in the Big Ten to do that was Mateen Cleaves, to have been a 3-time first or second team All-American. And it's a short list, like in the last 50 to 60 years of who's all done that. I believe you could count them on one hand, and Kofi would be one of those. So that would be an amazing thing.
Do we add Braden Smith to that this year? Is he going to be a 3-time All-American?
Yeah.
Did he get one 2 years ago? Like, I'm sorry, I was just off the top of my head. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Maybe it would be. We'd get more on the Purdue note. We get more Zach Edey versus Kofi Coburn battles.
That's right.
And I do think we got to a point too, and I think even Illini fans a little bit guilty of this. Now it's always like, hey, when one team's done and you build a new team and you're trying to like get excited about what's going to be different. The post Kofi, there was some narrative of like, oh well, you're going to play more of a the 5 out. You can't win with Kofi in the middle and in just an old school style of basketball. Maybe we kind of come back around to that a little bit. I'm not saying he would be a great fit with Terrence Shannon. He had downhill, Kofi's in the lane. But hey, we had a national championship with Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan in it. So like you can have bigs who obviously are there and on really, really successful teams. So but yeah, it's all about Kofi's legacy. And again, statistically, he'd be the most prolific player that Illinois ever had.
Yeah, it's just like it's one of those things where it's like we talk about him highly, right? And I feel like nationally he's talked about pretty highly, but like it just there was another gear that I feel like he could have gotten to if he did come back for another year. And just to be honest with you, like the money he could have made, like if he would have come back for college basketball, he had 2 more years left if he wanted it. Could have made a couple million doing that. All right, you got any more, Derek? I got one last one.
I got one more too. I didn't put a lot of thought in this. It just came to my mind. What if Illinois would have hired Thad Matta? And so that would have been instead of Bruce Weber, right? You get the Hoopston native. You see what he did at Ohio State. I mean, that dude was loading up recruiting classes. I'm not saying that Greg Oden becomes an Illini. Maybe Evan Turner does.
I don't think Ron Gunther hires Thad Matta.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or Thad Matta is allowed to do what he did at Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Evan Turner ends up being an Illini.
That could have been true. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that he's a Hall of Fame Final Four coach. That's one that I know that has come up through the years. Last one, mostly joking. What if Coach K would have parlayed his Muhammad land into pushing his way into the Illinois job?
That's the all-timer, isn't it?
All right, you go.
Last one. What if Illinois wasn't in the same region as UConn in 2024? I thought about this one, and we always think, like, if it wasn't UConn, they would have made a Final Four. Well, if they were 3 in the South, they would have gone through Arizona, who they lost to that year, right? And Alabama. If they were 3 in the West, they would have they didn't play Arizona that year. They did play Marquette that year, right? At home. They lost to Marquette. They would have to go through them most likely, but Marquette lost in the second round. They would have to go through Duke or Houston. I would not have wanted to play Houston. If they were 3 in the Midwest, they would have to go through Purdue or Tennessee. They lost to Tennessee earlier that year. And let's be honest, they got a break with Duquesne beating BYU to get to the, easy second round matchup. And I thought Iowa State was one of the better matchups for them even though it was a great game. Like I thought it was one of the better matchups for them that they could have gotten in the Sweet 16 there. So it still would have been difficult to get to a Final Four, right? I guess that's my point. Like I don't know. It's just I don't think, despite Marcus Damas playing really well in the first half and kind of keeping Illinois in that game, I don't think you ever had a chance against that team. Like, and the game plan was not great. I got it the first 5 minutes, go at Donovan Clingan, get him in foul trouble, changes the game. Then they had the other kid who came in there and blocked a bunch of shots. Samson, is that his name? Yeah, came in and blocked a bunch of shots and just did not like that. I mean, there's really no great game plan against that UConn team, but didn't love that after the first 5 minutes. It's like, all right, we got to try something different here. But still, I even with a great game plan, I don't think you're beating that team.
I don't think you're beating them either. That was just a monster of a team to go against that had great talent and obviously, Clingan in the middle. But it was embarrassing. Like that 30-0 run is embarrassing to see. Doesn't take away from the fact that was a great year for Underwood and Elite Eight is a great accomplishment for that squad. They ultimately met and exceeded expectations that year. But yeah, I even think, and look, I don't blame Brad for saying as often as he can that was a Final Four team that got beat in the Elite Eight by UConn. Like if they would have been in a different bracket, I think you very accurately point out different scenarios that it wouldn't have been just an automatic they would be there. Even the one I just automatically throw, what if they're in the Purdue's region? What if they're playing Purdue in the I don't know if that works out, but we have seen interconference matchups like later on in the second weekends and whatnot. If you're playing Purdue in a rematch, like I don't know that you beat them to go to a Final Four. Thinking about teams that actually made it to the Final Four instead of you, do you beat Bama if you're playing Alabama that year? Like knowing how they can score, knowing how Illinois was playing defense that year, that would have been a laser show of an offensive type of deal. But
Marquette lost in the Sweet 16, by the way, that NC State team. I would have beat that. I would have had Illinois beating that NC State team. That is for sure. Yeah. Would they have beaten who was on that Duke team that year? Is that Jared McCain?
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
You could have Filipowski, McCain, Proctor, Roach, Mitchell. That's a good game. You could have beat that team. That would have been the best draw.
I think that team.
That Duke team beat Houston. Like I would have much rather played Duke than Houston in that one. So yeah. Those have been tough games. Like that's all I'm saying. Like it's not written. Certainly would have had a better chance not playing UConn though.
No doubt. I would have loved to see it. And that was a really good team. Illinois tough to stop. Terrence was doing what he did in the postseason. Says a lot about UConn that they could force him into the game that he ended up having. But
that's the thing. Every other team, I mean, maybe besides Purdue, you had the best player. It was UConn. Like even that UConn game, I thought you had the best player on the floor. You had enough guys on the UConn team to beat them. I mean that team probably had the next 5 best players. Maybe throw Damascus in that top 7, but man, they were just absolutely loaded. But all those other teams, I think, besides Purdue, you had the best, most impactful player.
Yep. Good, man.
I think we covered a lot of the good ones. We could do this podcast for hours. But.
What if Robbie Hummel was an Illini? Like you could do a lot of ones that, and you could obviously you could do an hour on the Self thing, the national title. What else are we missing?
No, there's too many of them. Too many recruiting ones.
Yeah,
right. I think almost every school has those. It just feels like Illinois got the heartbreakers more than most of them. But yeah, I think we hit on the major ones. It's a fun conversation, fun to think about. Because there are, like, I'm glad we hit on some, especially in the Brad Underwood era, that kind of went your way.
No doubt.
Kansas not offering Iowa to Sumo, pretty big deal. Right? It was down to you and Wake Forest. That's a different battle than, Illinois, Kansas there.
That's true. I think, Trent Frazier getting a 5th year to be able to come back was a big thing.
COVID happening and keeping Io from leaving his second year, right? Or his first year. He thought about it his first year, but not having that NBA draft combine, I think was huge for Io to come back. Because obviously he wanted to play in the tournament and all of that. But I think a lot of it was just like he couldn't get any feedback really from the NBA.
Yeah, it wasn't an NIL situation where he's getting paid more than where he would have landed in the draft. There's a lot of situations, different players, different however it plays out. That video, I remember. Oh, that video that he dropped on the return, and it was kind of like it was greatly put together, and the drama of it, of getting ready for the NBA, and then changes. Like, I can watch that video, still get some like goosebumps on it, and I think a lot of fans obviously are probably very with me on that.
He keeps doing it. His crew keeps doing it. He's part of the Nasir Rankin announcement video.
That was cool.
Well,
that was awesome. But
how about is this a good break that you played Jalen Pickett and he beat you so badly that you go, we need to do that, and you found Marcus Damask and decided midway through the year, like, yeah, that's what we're gonna do, and it gets you to Elite Eight. Because we talk all about Terrence Shannon running booty ball through Marcus Damask was a huge reason you won 29 games there.
Yeah. That's a good point. As painful as it was for Illinois to lose to Penn State 3 times, and remember covering that Big Ten tournament game, like, we're going to do this again, aren't we? Yeah, that was
your funk tearing you up.
That was stealing a blueprint and having a lot of success with it, no doubt.
Yeah. All right, that was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Throughout the summer, we'll have more chances to do some stuff like this. But we appreciate you listening to the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on our YouTube channel. Hit that like button. Subscribe to us. Hit the notifications bell as well. Derek's been rolling through his player outlooks. I think we'll have some recruiting stuff here. Football recruiting, going to have a huge week ahead. So if you're not a VIP member, you can sign up now and maybe wait a day or two. We're going to have a big sale here coming up. So if you're not a VIP member, be on the lookout for that as well. But for Derek Piper, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.